Hey folks, before we get to the thing, are you tired of being paid in clicks and likes? Welcome to my struggle bus. Patreon lets you build real sustainable income through the direct support of your fans. The creative system is broken and we all know this, right? If you're a creator, sign up on patreon.com right now. That's patreon.com and start building the steady income stream you deserve. All right, let's do it. This is Surviving the Music Industry.
That sounds sick.
I didn't think about how that sounded.
Hey everybody, this is Brandon from SMI Podcast, and 2020 is not going anywhere soon, and we're just kind of wallowing in this mess. I don't know if you guys ever heard of waller, but that's a real word. Is it in the dictionary? I have no idea. It's at least existed in the timeline of my life, but we're just like, I don't know, we're Scrooge McDuck just kind of swimming in this situation, and you might as well just deal with it. And I'm your elder millennial, and I say just cozy on up to this rad podcast, Surviving the Music Industry. It's where you get to listen to how I'm kind of surviving this whole thing, and I get to have pretty rad conversations along the way with people that are actually doing the thing. You know what I'm saying? So, had this conversation with McAnally. This was a long time coming, and I was so excited to have it done. We got it in, and we got it out of the way. We felt good about it. We both walked away thinking, yes, we made each of our lives better than where we started from. So, it was great. It made me feel good. I think Mac enjoyed it, too. And we'll get to that in a second. But checking in on all you peeps out there. Best way to keep track with us at SMI Podcast on some of those socials, other socials at Unofficial Brandon. I got that TikTok set up, but hey, are we canceling this situation? Or are we just deleting it from our phone? What's going to happen if old Trumpo says Ixnay on the TikTok? I have no idea. That's why I haven't spent much time equity on my part, to jump into it. I love doing it. It makes me kind of sad if it does go away because I actually do enjoy doing the bits and some of the comedy stuff. And it's kind of an escape just to kind of do my own thing. And I kind of feel like everybody else is kind of in that same ship. We're all in the kind of this, no, not in the same ship. I guess we're all in the same story. Like some of those people have millions of followers. What are they going to do when they delete it? Just standing outside in a hurricane, wonder where your fans are? I don't know, but everything is just so up in the air. But you know what you can count on? A T-Swift record launching in 2020. Man, good for them. I have my opinions about the record, but the launch itself, pretty smart, in my humble opinion. Because besides Eminem did his record last year, but then there's. Nothing was shaking the tree of everybody thinking, oh, we got to have something good. We got to have something to talk about. At least 2020, we had Tiger King, right? And we could talk about that for a bit. And I think old T-Swift team said, we're going to do this record and send it out, and boom. And we got it. You got that magic. If you're a T-Swifter, if that's your thing, you loved it. Some of my favorite records are some people don't really love. I loved the... Well, I'll go ahead and start with this. How about this? That I did not like the 1989 record. And my biggest qualm is that, and my biggest complaint, that's what, in case, just in case, that it was something that I feel like other bands do really well. They carry that 80s vibe with the synths, the sounds, and just even the melodies. I mean, in 1975, no matter what you think about them or that guy or where you are, on the cancel culture, they do that sound and that thing better than what T-Swift did. And so I went into Folklore thinking kind of the same thing. Okay, she got, Bon Iver and a bunch of other people around this indie culture, this indie scene to get into it. And I kind of developed those sounds and produce it. And I started thinking, it feels like the same thing. There's just other people that do it really, really, really well. And she's going to capitalize on this stream of music consciousness. And so I gave it a shot anyway. In my honest opinion, I liked it. It was good. Really good songs. Got me thinking. And it's a great record. So good for them. I mean, something good in 2020 is happening. And it's something that we always got to kind of look out for. I'm not the guy that reaches and looks for the best things all the time. If you listen to this enough, you definitely know. So I think this is going to be like a highlight of 2020. I mean, we still got Carole Baskin, right? I mean, that joke hasn't gone away anytime soon. So, but I think we can look at the folklore. But the whole situation's still in the logo. And that's something to kind of look forward to. Take something good and then something just shits on it. Oh, man. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But you know what? Hope you guys are just taking care of yourselves. Keep in touch with us. Add us in my podcast. Add Unofficial Brandon. Not checking on the ticks and the talks these days. But I don't know. Stay in touch. Let's do the thing. But I really hope everybody's doing well in this time. You're juggling with your anxiety. You're working through your creative spirit. If you're part of the Gym Pop, you listen to this thing. We appreciate you listening. Listen, I love clicks and likes, but that's not going to pay your water bill or your White Claw habit. Social media and streaming platforms help people find your work, but getting you paid is a completely different story. With Patreon, you can stop rolling the dice of ad revenue and per-stream payouts and grow your creative career through the direct support of the people who care the most. That's your fans, people. Since Patreon is built for creators, not advertisers, you'll skip the middlemen and develop a sustainable income source by offering a monthly membership to your fans. In return, they'll get access to exclusive community, premium content, and the chance to become active participants in the work that they love. The creative system is broken and we all know this. So if you're a podcaster, video maker, musician, writer, illustrator, quilter, whatever that is, or a creative person of any kind, sign up on patreon.com. That's patreon.com and change the way your creativity is valued by building the steady income stream you deserve. I'm super stoked to talk to Mac because the show's been around for about 5 years now, okay? So it's been always the thing of Mac was on my list from the very beginning. But timing, I don't know. And then also credentials, street cred of me and the show. I don't know. Whatever reason, it just never worked out. But he's got a record out, Once in a Lifetime. It's available now, all streaming platforms, and you should go jam it. Especially if you're a fan of songwriting, if you're if you're kind of hip to the session cat scene, if you're I don't know, I would say that even if you're a boomer and you're around when Mac's career launched in the 70s, you might be listening right now. And I think you can get into his other stuff, too. He's part of the Jimmy Buffett band. Longtime member. He's the token Baptist. We get into that. There's a bunch of stuff that we get into. But a couple things you need to know kind of walking into this thing. First of all, the record. The record is good. Again, if you're a fan of all these things that I just kind of mentioned, you're going to fall in love with this record because these are songs that he's kind of held on to for a little bit. But now he's kind of putting them all in one basket. And the basket is called Once in a Lifetime, releasing some of the songs and the music. And there's a lot of things about this record that are so good, from the production, from the acoustic playing, the songs. My biggest takeaway probably had to be just a little bit of the honesty that's there. I mean, there's some songs that really get you contemplating. And me knowing, I knew that he wrote most of the stuff a while back, but, applying it to today's, climate, and whatever that means in your headspace, it was just kind of like, man, that's the power of a great song. It can just fit in any timeline that you kind of place it in. But he's got a song on there, Almost All Good. And we talk about it at the very top of the conversation. Alive and In Between, Once in a Lifetime, title track. That's why they call it Falling. Great song titles. He did a cover of Norwegian Wood. You're a Beatles fan. He took up that challenge. I think anybody was going to do it, it's going to be somebody like Mac, The other part of Mac's brain is that he's a session guy. He's a Nashville cat. He plays acoustic on basically everybody's record that you can almost kind of think of. From Kenny Chesney, he's a coral reefer, so Jimmy Buffett, of course. Keith Whitley. So, if you guys know me well enough, we definitely talk about Keith Whitley in some of those sessions. I think a lot of tracks in my imagination from the 90s, 80s, into the 2000s that kind of premiere an acoustic guitar, you can probably think McAnally. He started his career at Muscle Shoals. I mean, how are you not going to be the guy in Nashville eventually? Also, he's a songwriter. We already know this because he has a record, right? But he has cuts with other people. You know, Kenny Chesney, Down the Road. Ugh, man, Back Where I Come From. That's another one. Down by the River, You First. Trying to think of some other stuff that just kind of pops up in my mind. Oh, Hello. 2 Dozen Roses, Shenandoah. Oh, shit, man. That's one of my favorite songs probably ever. Sammy Kershaw, Southbound. I mean, the guy has writer's credits. He's got producer credits from Jimmy Buffett, Kenny Chesney. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Sawyer Brown, about this guy's career. And honestly, we tried to tap into a little bit as much as possible from Muscle Shoals to his original artist career, dodging and ducking and weaving in music, being a songwriter, session player, producer. We kind of talk about it all. I'm so glad that we got to do it. And we got to talk a little bit about the record before we had to go. Doctor's office. Yeah, problems, human problems. These people are just as human as you and I, except he's caring about his health probably more than I am, than taking care of all these White Claws in one sitting. For everything about Mac, you want to check on what's happening in his life, you can definitely go to his website. They update it pretty regularly, McAnally.com. Also, go give him a follow on those social medias at McAnally. Once in a Lifetime is the record. It's out on all streaming platforms. Go enjoy it. You'll enjoy sitting. I really enjoyed sipping a little bit of whiskey, even smoking a pipe on the outside, listening to these songs when I had the opportunity to. And I really think that you'll enjoy it. But without further ado, here we go.
Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Oh, I cannot complain.
I'm a little disappointed. I was really hoping you were going to say almost all good.
Well, I'm glad you were looking for it, because that is pretty much the way it is. I'm kind of embarrassed in this particular piece of time to be as optimistic as I am by nature. So I always just kind of lead with can't complain. I got, and I understand almost everybody has stuff to complain about.
Yeah.
I just find it doesn't really pay off very much.
The grand scheme of things, life's really not that bad for some.
No, it's we're lucky to be here. I remember one of the comedians had a routine about, whatever's going on Earth is pretty good, because if you go 1 trillion miles in any direction, it kind of sucks.
I like that. Oh, that's good. That's clever. I love it. Well, dude, I've been wanting to do this for years, and I'm just excited to do it. It's just casual conversation. Just imagine we're drinking coffee in person, and then we just kind of roll with it.
I'm game.
Yeah. Are you a coffee guy?
I'm actually not, but I am a conversation guy. Yeah. No, they put sweet tea in my baby bottle, I think.
That's
pretty much the way it worked for me.
Mississippi baby, I know that. Yeah, there's a few session guys I know that don't drink coffee. Tom Hemby is one of those. The first time I moved to town, right, I was hanging out with Tom, and I pitched him, hey man, let's go get coffee, let's sit down, do the Nashville thing. And that was like already strike one for me, because he doesn't like coffee at all. He doesn't drink, so that was strike two. I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I went straight for desserts. So I got him with desserts.
Dessert will get me. Jimmy jokes all the time, I've never had a beer in my life, and I've been playing honky tonk since I was 13. And I'm like a failure as a choral reefer. He calls me the token Baptist at the choral reefer band, but that's not really what it is. I just had so much beer slung on me early on before I ever tasted it. It smelled bad to me, and I just, I for some reason or other, never started drinking. And I was always, I was always goofy and hungry to start with, so drugs weren't really appealing to me too much either. So dessert will do it, though. Yeah.
I mean, beer through chicken wire is not the same thing, but a slice of coconut pie, it'll get you somewhere.
Coconut pie works,
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, dude, thanks for doing this. I know, one, it's crazy time, but then also you got a record coming out, so perfect timing on your part.
Yes, it is true. And between mine and, we just put out Buffett's record that I co-produced, and it's called Life on the Flip Side, and we named it that before this all started happening. So it looks like we're prophesying a little bit,
Yeah.
even though we weren't.
Yeah, a little Nostradamus. Well, I mean, you guys got a little comedian edge to you. I mean, and you don't even know
It is true.
Yeah.
It is true.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, to put a record out in this time, it astounds me. I mean, yeah, obviously you plan these things on down the road, so I have nothing but empathy for guys trying to do something and put it out there. But I do have to say, don't try and buy a house during a pandemic, because that's exactly what I'm going through. And so that's the only way I can empathize with you about putting a record out during this time.
So you're going to have a podcast and a blues album here in about 6 months, right?
Yeah, just about. I mean, are you taking this thing pretty serious yourself?
Absolutely. From the viral standpoint of things, no question about it. Because I'm a heart attack survivor, so I'm in the high risk, and I'm old enough to be high risk even without all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely taking it serious, and I've got 3 kids, who are out in it. My oldest daughter and son-in-law had the virus early on. Still don't know how they got it, but they came through it all right.
Oh,
but,
good.
And my middle daughter is a nurse who's going through it now. So I've got quarantine kids. I haven't seen or hugged my kids in this whole time, and that's not normal for me. So I am taking it serious.
Yeah. Wow, that's insane. Yeah, everything changed for me personally having a conversation with somebody in the medical field that understands it. Because, it's the thing, is it a conspiracy? Like, how serious is it? But you have a nurse in the family, and you already had 2 kids take it or have it, and that changes your entire perspective on the whole thing.
No, it definitely does. And I was friends with John Prine. He's a mentor of mine, and that he went early on in this, and that, and that's not just my loss; that's everybody's loss.
I know that was a tough one. Joe Diffie was a tough one on me.
Awful, terrible. And a couple other friends who were just like studio manager, Mark Knopfler studio manager over in England, David Stewart, who was my age and had no health thing at all. It got him. You don't really know. Some people it doesn't bother so much. Some people, like my oldest daughter, she said it wasn't as bad as the flu for her. But then then you see what it does to other folks. So we're just learning. Yeah.
That's just it. Nobody knows what it is, and you're still learning about it. Yeah, that's insane. Are you still recording right now, or are you working from home most of the time?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to have what I call a musical tool shed. I can go upstairs and record in my house in Nashville, and I've still got a full bore studio down in Muscle Shoals that where most of the record was done. We mixed it up here, but cut the tracks down in Shoals, and the fact that that's 2 hours away, and nobody lives at that place, so I can quarantine. I can stay quarantined and work in both of those places. And it's been for sure a blessing for me to have essentially 2 workplaces that I can go between and live at, simultaneously.
Well, yeah, there you go. It's business as usual for you, it sounds like.
Yeah. So when I say I can't complain, I mean, I wouldn't complain anyway, but I really can't. Because you think, when I think of, like my daughter who's on the front of the healthcare part of it, and then over and above that, people working the drive-through lines at the fast food places and the grocery stores, they're facing some stuff too that they have to go to work.
Yeah, I feel bad for Tammy that works at Sonic. I had to go through Sonic. Like, I picked up something for my wife and my mother-in-law, and I just thought, man, I'd hate to be a teenager or just somebody working in fast food at this time. Like, you're giving your life for a paycheck that you live week to week and in fast food. That's insane.
No, it's I feel for them big time. I wasn't bringing it up facetiously. I really do feel for them, and I know you do too. There's, I know our topic is surviving the music industry, and I know that I'm fortunate just to have done it at this point. Because I played in church from the time I was a kid, or sang in church, and then started in honky tonks, state line honky tonks at 13 years old, and then studios at 15 years old, and I am, I'm in the middle of my 6th decade, or actually 7th decade. I'm in my 60s now, and I still get to call this a job, and so that makes me so lucky. It doesn't mean I know Jack, and you'll you'll get to farm that knowledge over the next conversation, because I don't particularly know what I'm doing, but I'm still here. I may have had some little modicum of gift to go with it, but it's mostly not going away.
Yeah.
And I'm also, bolstered by the fact that I'm totally unskilled labor. If you get me, above the seventh fret of a guitar or off the end of it, I'm totally worthless at anything else. So,
that's funny.
So that helps motivate you to stay in, to stay in the biz when you know for sure you can't do anything else.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to get there. So you started in church stuff, huh? Local church stuff.
Yeah, my mom was a gospel piano player, and so we were there anytime the church doors open, and I was sitting around. And I'm a bashful guy since about 7 or 8 years old, but up to that point, you could stand me on a piano bench and I'd sing my heart out. Then, for some reason, whether 7 or 8, I shut it down. I wouldn't sing, and I'm still a bashful guy, which it makes it somewhat ironic that you end up in show business. And,
I know. It usually is that dichotomy, right? It is like there's an irony within me too of this duality, I think, within us that exists. But I felt the same way at an early age as well.
Well, and it's being a farm kid, also growing up in a rural area, we're raised to think that it's not a character trait to call attention to yourself.
Right.
That's not considered a positive character trait. And I honestly sort of think that way. So to get then I got I played in bands, I was always a sideman, and I am primarily still a sideman, even though I'm putting a record out.
Yeah.
And if there's 3 guys on stage, I'm going to start backing one of them up. It's just my nature to be an accompanist. So for 30 years for me, when I had to play a show, the only way I would do it is if it was solo, because if there's anybody else there, I'm their backup.
Yeah.
But my stage presentation has always been pretty much to sit and self-deprecate and apologize for the song that I'm about to play and thank them for putting up with it when I'm done. That's just kind of my whole. It's not a spiel; it's the way I am.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the folk artist, I feel like, in you, right? I mean, I feel like that was like a perfect time for you, especially after Muscle Shoals, when that started. I want to pick your brain about that, but it just seems like folk music is perfect for your personality.
It really is, and because most of, like, when I wrote my first 2 albums worth of material, I didn't know what I was doing was writing songs. I never would have, I wouldn't have been bold enough to claim that. I just knew I was staying up later than my parents and thinking about life and playing the guitar at the same time. And I would say, well, if, I'm going to come up with a guitar part that's fun to play, and I'll try to put a melody in it. And if I was going to sing, I would sing this melody, but I'm not going to sing because I can't. That was my mindset. And then I never wrote words down. I would say if I was going to sing some words, I would sing these words, but I'm not going to write them down because I'm not writing. I was just at every turn. I was like, and I also said, if I couldn't remember a song, I didn't have any right to inflict it on anybody else. Yeah. So I never wrote anything down. Like for like the first 7 or 8 albums, I never wrote anything down.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's crazy.
So I'm like the worst mentor to songwriters. I'm the don'ts of everything, but my thought was, I had to be able to remember it. And so I'm a particularly inefficient songwriter as well.
Yeah, I had that mentality as well. Like, I would never write down an idea because I felt like, and I feel like this is what you're saying too, that I would never write down an idea because if I remember it, it would be worth it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also, and still to this day, I don't really, I've never been like you're supposed to develop your craft as a songwriter. You're supposed to devote a certain amount of time to it. Sit there with a blank notepad or a blank, whether it's a dictaphone these days or into a voice memo or whatever it is, you put in a certain amount of time trying to write songs. I have never really done that in my life.
Well, what was your thing then? Because I knew about, especially around Crazy World, It's a Crazy World, like before that, I knew you were working at Muscle Shoals. You were cutting your teeth records and stuff. So hanging out with Rick Hall and everything. I mean, were you writing songs during this time?
Well, and like I said, I didn't have the nerve to call it that, but I was. But probably the first half dozen things that I wrote literally just fell out of my mouth in the amount of time it takes to sing them.
Yeah, so it was like a stream of consciousness kind of thing.
Yes,
yeah.
And it's a crazy world was that. It was written in the amount of time it takes to play in exactly the form. I didn't change a syllable of it. I didn't change a note. The guitar part, everything about it. I played it. The first time it was ever played is exactly the way I play it still. And I said, well, maybe that's how people write songs. I didn't know. I didn't know anybody else that wrote songs. So maybe they just fall out of you like drool.
Yeah. And if we're talking about like the Fame crew and the Muscle Shoals crew, like those are just session guys. I mean, they're not really songwriters, right? So
right.
Yeah. So there was no template for you.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And so I went from playing honky tonks up at the state line, because Muscle Shoals at that time was a dry county, and Belmont, Mississippi was a dry county, so there were no places to play live music, and plus I was underage. I played in church until I was 13, and then crazy circle of life thing. This guy comes to our house and makes a pitch for me to play with him at a state line honky tonk at Iron City, Tennessee, up above Muscle Shoals, and he played 5 nights a week, and my parents have never been in a honky tonk in their life, and they're never going to go into one.
Yeah, what's the nomination? What was the thing?
We were Baptists, but we were pretty strict Baptists.
Okay.
My mom, like I said, she loved music. My dad loved music. They weren't judgmental about it in any way, but they were never ever going to a honky tonk.
Got it. I'm Southern Baptist too. I understand that, but we're backdoor Baptists. There would be a beer and cigarettes by the back door, and then when church started, you got in at the back pew. I get that, but I get that mentality.
But we weren't even that. But at any rate, this guy, he kept working and he kept talking, and his name was Dean Lindley. He worked at the body shop at Muscle Shoals at the Ford place. But he was by night he was a country music, not a wannabe. He actually had a band that was successful and a following and everything. But he said to my parents, "I know you want your son to be a musician," and they said, "Yes, we do." And they always imagined I'd be like a youth minister at church, because that's the only way that they knew you could make a living. My mom never charged. She played funerals and weddings and played for some of the gospel quartets when they came through town, but she never charged anybody. I don't think she ever made a penny in her life as a piano player. She
that's
did
good
it because
money in
that's
the
what
South,
you do.
because that's all the time. So that's crazy.
Oh yeah,
wow.
Yeah. But no, but she would have thought of me as being a youth, a music minister in a church as my shot, or maybe a band director or something. But anyway, this guy said, "I'm a good Christian man. I know you want your son to be a musician. I will look after him. I'll come down here and pick him up, and because I couldn't drive, I was 13, and I'll pick him up and take him to Tennessee, and we'll play, and I'll bring him home when we're done, and I'll make sure he behaves himself." And I'm thinking my parents are about to throw this guy off the porch.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about taking me to a nightclub.
Right, right.
But he also told them that he would pay me $250 a week.
That's music to somebody's ears. That's for sure.
Something in his presentation made an impact on my parents. And that Friday night, I was playing in a lime green leisure suit at the Circle E Club in Iron City, Tennessee, playing country songs that I had never heard in my life.
Oh, that's amazing.
And the band, the name of the band was Dean and the Reefers. And the guy's name was Shelby Dean Lindley, and he's a good singer, and he was a good guy. But he didn't know what reefer meant. He didn't know what that word meant.
Oh, that's funny.
He just thought it was a cool sounding word. So we had a van that had Dean and the Reefers painted on the side of it. And he was like straight on redneck crew cut. He was a good Christian man, like he told my parents, but a butch crew cut, and he could never figure out why all the hippies gave us the peace sign when we drove by in that van that said Dean and the Reefers on it. And he's like, "Why do they do that? I wish they wouldn't do that." so circle of life. Now I'm a choral reefer for the last 30 years. I'm in the choral reefer band. I started out in Dean and the Reefers, and here we are, surviving the music industry.
Yeah, you can't get away from the reefer, Mac. It's just part of your life.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah,
but that place that we were playing, I was afraid to get off stage. I'd never seen anything like that in my life, and honestly, I'd never seen any honky tonk in the world. But I've seen hundreds of them now, and I've still never seen anything like the Circle E Club in Iron City, Tennessee.
Yeah. So was it like the Blues Brothers chicken wire thing? Because I'm just imagining early '70s. Yeah, it's a pretty rough crowd.
There were some guys that brought chainsaws inside the club and revved them up instead of applauding. If they liked a song, it'd be, and they would hold them up in the air, live chainsaws.
A yeehaw was too much. Go get fuel, oil up the engine, take care of the chainsaw. That's it.
No, if you really liked the song, you were going to smell some 2-cycle fluid running pretty hard, burning indoors. So I was afraid to get off stage. When we took a break, I would lay down behind the piano early on, and then when I got more accustomed to the gig, I would just bring my acoustic guitar and practice. When the rest of the band took a break, I wouldn't even walk, and I'm sure they were all fine people and everything, but I was just scared to death.
Yeah, 13 years old, a bunch of rednecks with chainsaws. I mean, your imagination can run pretty wild.
and then you multiply that by the fact that I've been playing church all my life until then, and some of the same crowd was at both places.
Right.
That wakes you up a little bit too.
Oh, Mr. Patterson, good to see you too. See you at choir.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you old enough being here, son?
Okay, so were you playing acoustic? I feel like just acoustic has always been part of your life, but is that what you were doing at 13?
No, honestly, I never got to be a guitar player in probably the first 6 or 7 bands that I played in. I was always the piano player.
Piano, okay.
And I'm not a very good piano player. You almost anybody will vouch for me on that.
No, that can't be true. I can ask Moose, and Moose will tell me.
I mean, Moose goes back and forth really well between guitar and piano too.
Yeah, I know.
But back then, everybody was a guitar player, and if you knew the notes of a piano, you were the piano player.
Oh, you were hired. Yeah, absolutely.
And also, you were never going to. Everybody disappeared when it's time to load. Because there weren't any portable under your arm keyboards back in those days. It was an organ and a Fender Rhodes, and it's time to load, and there's nobody.
Yeah, so I understand wanting to switch to acoustic.
Yeah, I wanted to be an acoustic player, and that's really how. That's what my connection to the session guys in Muscle Shoals was, because Muscle Shoals was a dry county. If the session players wanted to play a gig or wanted to sit in at a gig, they had to go to the state line. They came to Tennessee state line. And so I was up there playing at 13, and some of them came up there to have a beer after their sessions or whatever, or let a little steam off at the end of the day. And there's this weird kid sitting and playing acoustic guitar on stage during the break from the band, and they'd come up and introduce themselves to me to see what I was doing. And I had already read some of their names on the record covers, on album credits.
Yeah, who was coming to see you? Do you remember?
Well, it was, I met Roger Hawkins. I met Lenny LeBlanc. I met, phenomenal, world-class, historic Mount Rushmore kind of musicians that were coming up there just passing the time. And
being 13 at a bar gig in the early 70s, I'm guessing it's the early 70s, that it's not really a novelty, because I feel like I've heard stories kind of like this before. It was just the thing that you did, right? And so I feel like they didn't approach you because of a novelty. It was the thing of, this 13-year-old kid can actually play.
Well, plus it's weird that I'd be sitting and practicing, in the middle of the night at a bar at Tennessee. But what came from it was they said, hey, we don't have in Muscle Shoals, we don't really have an acoustic player.
Oh, wow.
We got great guitar players, and a bunch of them are great acoustic players too, but they're electric first. There wasn't really a dedicated acoustic player in Muscle Shoals. And just the physics of that, they're like, hey, would you like to come play acoustic sometime on some of our sessions that need acoustic? I'm like, man, I'd love to. So at 15, I got to start going and playing in studios. And yeah, I had a better excuse for not knowing my ass from a hole in the ground at that point than I do now. But I got to go and sit at the feet of people that knew what they were doing and were world class at what they were doing, and learn some stuff.
Just the grandfathers and the Mount Rushmore pocket. That's what my mind always goes to, like with some of those Muscle Shoal cats, and like to be 15 years old. And this is a personal thing. Like, I don't know I could hang at 15 years old as a guitar player, but I feel like you learn pretty quick when you're thrown in an environment like that because.
Well, I felt so lucky to be there, and my nature is, if I thought something was over my head, I would just tell them. If they come in there and sometimes it was, come in there and it's. One of the guys would start slinging out some jazz chords that I didn't know yet. And I went, hey, guys, I'd be the fella to go get cheeseburgers for everybody right now while y'all cut this song, and I will jam it. When we get back, I'll clap for you how great you did it. And too, Brandon, no matter whether you go get a degree in commercial music or whether you play in honky tonks from the time you're 13 to whenever you get a record deal, any way that you get into this business, you're going to be the guy that goes and gets food at some point. Yeah,
no kidding. I've done it a time or two myself. I didn't realize how important that guy was until I did it.
Yeah, and I at this point in time, sometimes I'm a background singer, and sometimes I'm a songwriter. Sometimes I'm in what I call the produce section. I get to be a producer sometimes too. Yeah. But it doesn't make any difference. I'm still going to go get the food.
Yeah.
If the next guy to me needs to keep working.
Yeah.
It's important to get the food, and it's important to do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah. And if there's a line drawn in the sand between pride and going to get a cheeseburger, go get a cheeseburger.
Go get the cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And one thing that I'm happy to have learned early is, it takes the same amount of time to eat while it's fresh than it does when it's been sitting there 8 hours. So let's eat it.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. So you're doing this at, 13, 15. Did you ever go to school at that point? Did you quit school?
I did. I dropped out of school in the 11th grade to be a full-time, but I was playing 5 nights a week when I was in the 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah, it was a full-time job. I mean, you were making a career, bringing home money to the family. That was the thing. Yeah,
I couldn't think of anything to do with it. I just gave it to my parents. Yeah. I'd keep enough to have a hamburger steak with, chili and onions and cheese melted all over it. But beyond that, I couldn't think of anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I was too young. And my dad was a school teacher. My dad was assistant principal when I dropped out of school. So that,
the irony behind that, Mac. That's
yeah, and I wouldn't have done it without his permission. So I had to make a presentation.
Oh wow!
I made a pretty impressive presentation, with a little pie chart and everything. And I'm not very artistic by nature. But
I feel like your dad is easily convinced into anything. Talking to an artist in a green suit with a Reefer in the band name, and then you quit in school. I'm pretty sure I could sell him a ketchup popsicle and white gloves.
Yeah, it's probably true. But he did really want me to be a musician, and that's what he. There aren't many professional musicians that are what their parents wanted them to be. And I am that.
Yeah,
that's what they wanted for me, and I'm really grateful. And honestly, I joke about them a lot, but the fact that they put trust in me as a 13-year-old to go into a place that they would never walk in the door of, and trust me to behave myself and still be the guy that they raised. It honestly made me behave myself in a way I might not have if I was sneaking off from them or anything. So I got to give them some credit for the way that they gave me enough rope to hang myself, and I just tied funny knots with it.
Amazing. So what were some of the recordings that you were doing in Muscle Shoals? Do you remember anything that stands out to you during that time?
Well, in the beginning, it was a lot of R&B and blues.
Yeah.
And I was not at that time. I wasn't that big of a country music fan. I'd never heard a lot of country music, and my first gigs were country music gigs, and we were playing songs I'd never heard. Like I said, we were playing. When I finally heard Willie Nelson do Willie Nelson songs, I got it. When I heard Merle Haggard do Merle Haggard songs, I got it. When I was just playing along with Dean and the Reefers, I didn't necessarily. The song seemed simplistic to me. Like I could hear the next chord change coming half a mile down the road, so I didn't have as much respect for the music when I first was exposed to it from that angle. Then like Willie came to Muscle Shoals and made that Phases and Stages album that had Bloody Mary Morning, and I heard some of his stuff and John Prine's stuff, and I got it more. Although that's more singer-songwriter stuff, I know. But the first, we did some Thelma Houston, who's a phenomenal singer. We did quite a few blues things, and we did a Roy Orbison album. I got to meet Roy, and he took a liking to me. Later on, let me go open some shows for him, which was awesome.
Oh, that is awesome! I love Roy Orbison.
Oh, what a sweetheart,
man.
But my first. I played on a bunch of sessions just as a kid from Belmont, but then I had to join the union to play. My first union session was Hank Williams Jr. And they said it was a noon start, and I had to drive to Birmingham to join the union. And the union didn't open it until 10 a.m. and it was 2 hours away. So I was sweating, my first session, and I'm going to get fired because I've got to drive to Birmingham, and I still did drive. So my dad drove me to Birmingham to join the union so that I could play on a Hank Jr. album.
Oh,
my dad drives about 40 miles an hour. So, and the guy the guy that ran the union in Birmingham, it was sort of a symphony union, but he took it really seriously. And I guess you should if somebody comes up and knocks on the door in Birmingham, Alabama, and says, I want to join the music union. But
right.
But he made me watch the film, like a 45-minute film, and put my hand on and swear and raise my other hand. It's like you're swearing into a court deposition.
Right.
And to be a fraternal sir and brother of the other musicians, and meanwhile I'm sitting there saying I'm just about to get fired off my first session ever because I'm never going to make it back by noon.
Yeah, can we hurry up? I got Family Tradition to record. Let's go.
Yeah, which we did then. We recorded Family Tradition down there in that studio. But at any rate, I was almost 2:00 getting back to my 12:00 session, thinking that I was dead in the water and I was never going to have a career making music, and I was the first guy there at 2:00.
This is all making sense to me. I mean, nobody would be on time. Nobody, of course.
Yeah, no. It's Muscle Shoals. We just sort of wander in after lunch, and then we talk about it for a while, and then we suit up and laugh and tell some stories, and then we cut some pretty amazing songs. And I didn't know that's how it was done, but it was a great way to find it out by not getting shit canned.
It takes a little pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounded like working with the first Reefer incarnation of the Reefer, that there was some and especially you live in the South, you got country in your DNA. You got some folk chops
about it.
In the
no
country.
Question about it.
And so it sounded like you were totally an asset to the Muscle Shoals thing, because I mean, this is after some of those Wilson Pickett cuts and recordings at Muscle Shoals.
Oh yeah.
Well into the country years. So Hank Williams, Family Tradition, and so on.
Oh yeah.
That.
Yeah. Yeah. We did Oak Ridge Boys and B.J. Thomas and Jerry Reed and then it worked its way into songwriting and doing Shenandoah. We made all those records down there, and it was a great time
Yeah,
a great time to be there.
That's so good. Marty Rayband is one of my favorite voices in country music. Man, he's so good.
What an awesome voice.
Man,
what an awesome voice.
Now, you produced some of their stuff, right?
Well, Robert Byrne and Rick Hall co-produced most all of that stuff, but I got to write. I played on it from the beginning, and I got to write after, I think it's maybe the second or third album. Marty called me up and said, "Man, you know my voice, write something for me to sing." And I'd never had that kind of assignment writing before at that point.
Write something for me, that voice, his voice, you know everything, the ins and outs of it.
And so what came from that, and I'm only going to tell it because it worked at least this one time. What came from that was Two Dozen Roses was what I wrote for him to sing.
That is the song for me. When I think about Shenandoah, Mac, that song is like the epitome of country music for me, especially for Shenandoah.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I will say, still to this day, when that one comes on the radio, I go, okay, we got something right. You know, we did get something right there.
Man, we played for them. It's probably got to be like 5 years ago for me now, but I still have a recording on my phone when they were doing sound check, and they were sound checking to that song, and I still got chills. I mean, that's the power of, one, the song, also the voices, and just the band themselves, but just the song. You could still hear that song on country radio. I mean, you get the mailbox money, you should know, but the thing is that it still rings true after all this time. Yeah,
it really does. And in my show, and my shows are different from one market to the next, you know, because some in the Southeast, a lot of folks that bought my first album, it's sort of short story songs, halfway recitations, because I was scared to death to sing.
Yeah.
But it's a crazy world, that sort of stuff. Some people come for that reason, and then Jimmy Buffett fans come because I've been on his records and in his band for 30 years now, and then a lot of folks come because of what I've been able to do in country music, whether it be songwriter or writing for other folks, Chesney, Alabama, Shenandoah, or because I've played guitar on the George Strait record. Or I've been such a I'm not a jack of all trades, but I've done several jobs in the music business along the way. And my little solo shows, which, usually is in a room that might hold 200, 300 people or something, it's always a different division among those groups that come to the show. And it's my job to try to make them all happy when they walk out the door. And sometimes folks come that are Two Dozen Roses fans, and they don't know anything about Jimmy Buffett, or they don't know anything about It's a Crazy World, and I get to try to make it all fit, and it is all me, so I don't feel like that's a daunting job. Mm-hmm. But some nights it's more of a country show, and some nights it's more of a Buffett show, and some nights it's more of an old dinosaur folk singers show too, and I enjoy it all. That's the nice thing about it. I have fun with all of it.
Yeah, well, that's what's most fascinating to me about you, because I feel like I've always had this impression, especially when I started the music thing, like it was like just do one thing and be great at that one thing. And to me, it hasn't, like, maybe in my generation, like in the Nashville scene, musician, or just even just the creative, here recently in the past 10 years or so, people started preaching, oh, you got to do more. You got to have more tricks up your sleeve in your bag, become a utility player, be a producer, be a songwriter. Like, there were so few people, I feel like, in your class that were just able to do it all and actually did it all.
One of my standard lines in the show is spare time is the major export of Mississippi. But, when the way that I happened to start, because I was interested in the music, and I would sit on our front porch with my acoustic guitar, and I didn't know anybody else. My mom played piano, and we'd play some together. My dad would strum a little guitar. But when it came time to try to come up with something, I wasn't in a band. I was sitting there by myself, so I tried to make it sound like a band. Mm. I tried my guitar part to be as much like a band as it could. So it might have a little walking line that would emulate rhythm or drums, and it would have a little moving bass line, and I'd try to have the melody contained inside the guitar part because I was too bashful to sing. Mm. So by the time I sat there in the porch and got all that going, it sounded kind of impressive, for one guy. I'm not saying it actually was, but I'm saying it sounded.
Yeah.
it sounded impressive.
For a 13-year-old. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. But when we got to the studio and all of this, I got to be around. I got to work with Rick Hall and Jerry Wexler and George Martin and and great record producers. And then it started coming to Nashville. And I got to work a little bit with Owen Bradley, and I got to work with Jimmy Bowen and Billy Sherrill, and who was from Muscle Shoals also. But all of that, and I didn't know. I was so young, I didn't realize in some cases that it was Mount Rushmore guys that I was hanging out with. But I knew that they knew a hell of a lot more than I did, and if I kept my mouth shut, I could learn a little bit more. And that's. So I got to see the cross between the analog age and the digital age, and work across full bands, getting to make a record basically live. Those Keith Whitley records that we did up here, Keith was sitting in the middle of the room singing live. Those lead vocals were live, and the Muscle Shoals guys got to do more of that than I did. With the Aretha records, that was her sitting there playing piano and singing live, and that's one of my favorite lines from that. I was asking Roger Hawkins about playing, for instance, on Chain of Fools. Oh yeah, and that's one of my favorite tracks ever. But I did play on it, but it's one of my favorite tracks ever. But Roger said, you just look over there at Aretha, and she's sitting there playing the piano and singing that vocal. And I just said, well, if she's going to do that, I better by God do something.
I love that. Yeah.
And it was, for me, it was that way too. With Keith Whitley, if he's going to sit there and sing, When You Say Nothing at All,
right,
and it's just me and him for the first verse, I better by God do something.
I know. Yeah. Keith Whitley is. But I always have to bother people that's worked with Keith, because Keith is one of my favorite country artists of all time. And so,
same here.
Oh man, that voice and just the songs alone, but his voice partner, and growing up with this music in my youth, I really didn't know who was playing, but it was always you in the background of Keith. And so, with that being said, my ears always tuned to the acoustic a lot more to anything else in the band, but with Keith. And so you are like part of that sound in my imagination. So even like with songs like I'm No Stranger to the Rain, just even that cascading opening line.
I think Billy Sanford and I are both playing acoustic on it, but yeah, that's and I honestly think. Sorry, I interrupted you there. Go ahead and finish your thought.
No, I just kind of had a train of thought of just, especially in a session like that where, especially in that time in my imagination in Nashville sessions, it was all about the electric player. It was all about making the music pretty hot. And when Keith kind of walked in, it was about this, it was a different thing. And so the pairing with the acoustic just seemed pretty strategic, or it was just serendipitous of having you doing your thing with Keith.
So much of the awesome acoustic guitar history in Nashville was like the kind of immortal Jimmy Capps and the rhythm stuff that they did, which I'm the first guy to admit I can't do that. They're unbelievable at what they do. But because of the way that I grew up trying to make the guitar sort of emulate a band, it kind of made me a good guy to have for those kind of songs where it opens like a singer-songwriter. I got the intro in the first verse, and I get you to the band. It's sort of like a relay race. I got to get you to the full band, and because of the way that I grew up playing, I didn't have any notion that would be of any use to anybody else in the world, but it was kind of use to that period of country music, because there were so many songs where it sounded like the singer was playing. Yeah. And I was trying to play, and because that's what I grew up doing, I was trying to play it like the singer would play. But, and Keith was more of a rudimentary kind of rhythm player, but I wanted to play it like he was playing if he was sitting down showing you a song for the first time. And and that's of use. That's something that's useful in the music world.
Yeah, just being aware of where that top line is, right? Because I never thought about it that way, but in my imagination as a kid, I just always imagined Keith Whitley is right there playing his acoustic, playing all those parts, singing his song. But especially with the
and that's what I wanted you to imagine, and that's what everybody wanted you to imagine.
Yeah.
The time between then and now, I had a run where they gave me a bunch of CMA Musician of the Year awards, which I in no way deserve. But the fact that people vote on that do the same job that I do, I am truly honored. To even be nominated with guys like Terry Douglas and Mark O'Connor and Chet Atkins, and those are heroes, all heroes of mine that I understand what. But my gig really is just that. Come up with some kind of little lick in the intro and get you till when the full band comes in. And then try not to run off and leave them after that, because acoustic guitar players historically rush like crazy.
Right, right. Well, and that's exactly what I was going to bring up, too. There's got to be, like, a perfect timing, like, within you somehow that keeps getting those calls, or you're just that guy that gets the cheeseburgers every time. Like, I feel like as an acoustic player, and, like, dude, that's your gig, that's your session job. Like, you have to have, I've never been in a session with you, so you have to tell me if, like, you just have to have some, like, Harry Potter magic when it comes to a pocket to acoustic, because that is the thing if you get hired as an acoustic player.
Being around Muscle Shoals, it's all about groove.
Yeah, right.
And they told me that from the beginning. When I try to play a hot lick or something, and I would usually, back in those days, I kind of wanted to stick one kind of fancy lick in everything that I got to play on. Now, I never wanted to take a solo in my life. And I will say, as advice to people getting in bands, as long as you don't want to take a solo, you can get a gig in a band for the rest of your life. Because the lead player, if you're willing to play rhythm for somebody else to take solos, they will want you in their band forever. Yeah. I never was the solo guy, but because of Muscle Shoals, and you want to just put it in the pocket, and there was such a deep pocket in Muscle Shoals, in really all of the rhythm sections that were down there. It was competitive that way. Yeah. They were all good. But that set the bar nicely for me to come up to Nashville. But my first session in Nashville, and I'll say this and shut up, but I was scared to death, because in Muscle Shoals we might work on a song all day long.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because there wasn't anything happening in Muscle Shoals more important than that song, and there wasn't anything that mattered more to the guys in the room than making that song be what it can be. And I'm not saying that that's a better method than Nashville, because we made some great records in Nashville too. But in Nashville, they were trying to get 3 songs in a 3-hour session.
Right,
and
right.
Now they're trying to get 6.
Yeah. But have times changed.
Yeah, but there's some guys who do it unbelievably well. I'm not in any way throwing down on that. It's remarkable, and I don't think I could do it. It's
insane how they do it, because I would hang around Ilya. I hung around Ilya for about a year and a half or so in the studio, and it's crazy, like, how much they can really churn out, and just the quality for what it is.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. It's remarkable. But my first session, I was worried about being fast enough to get 3 songs in a session, and I can't. And the band, Larry London was playing drums. It was my first time I ever met Larry London.
That's cool.
I knew who he was, and I knew, I had a high reverence for him already. But we cut the first 2 tracks on the session, and I'm just sitting there. We took a little break after 2 songs, and I'm just sitting there hoping that I didn't do anything that screwed the whole record up for anybody else. And taking a deep breath in my little booth, and the door swings open, and it's Larry London in the door of my little acoustic booth, and he is just glaring at me, and he goes, "You're no effing acoustic guitar player," and I'm sitting there, because that's the only thing in the world that I think I can half-ass do. And he just told me I was no effing acoustic guitar player, and I didn't say anything. I'm just looking at him scared to death, and he starts grinning a little bit, and he goes, "You don't even rush." And then he laughed, and then we're best friends after that. But
that's funny.
He's scared the daylights out of me.
You can't do that to a first day in a session in Nashville. I had a scary story like that once, and it wrecked me for life. So oh man, Larry London. I've never met him, but that's amazing.
Whatever my maximum heart rate was, that's exactly where it was at. As soon as he said that, I was like, I'm done.
You could have had a heart attack. That could have been your first heart attack.
That could have been my first heart attack. Yeah.
Oh wow! I mean, dude, there's so many places to go, like in your career. I mean, it's insane, like to try to, bottle it up. But I think another thing like that's fascinating to me is like your relationship, like with Jimmy Buffett. I know you done a lot of stuff with Steve Wariner throughout the years. Obviously, Shenandoah.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, there's just tons of stuff to go on. But I mean, especially the Jimmy Buffett years and being part of the Reefer band. That says something about you too. And especially being able to, write songs for that crew as well.
The thing people forget about Jimmy is that he don't really need any help writing songs. He's a heck of a songwriter.
Right. And what's crazy about Jimmy, which I feel like a lot of people, will overstep or not even think about is, the depth of songs. Like you can listen to Margaritaville and people just take it, it's Margaritaville. Yeah. I'm just going to drink a margarita. Mm-hmm. But it's actually a little bit more depressing than what it actually people think it is.
No, it's true. When a song becomes an iconic song, it becomes intrinsically positive. But it's lyrically a dark song. Yeah. As is, we've had this discussion. "You Are My Sunshine" is a dark song.
Yeah,
but it's sung as an uplifting song all over the world, and so is Margaritaville. And it's because Jimmy is just this sort of big rolling ball of goodwill. It doesn't matter what he sings; it's uplifting. And you could say the same thing in a different way about another guy from Mississippi besides Jimmy, B.B. King. He could sit there and sing the darkest blues song in the world and just make you smile. It make you soar from smiling because he was this big ball of happiness. It's funny, maybe ironic, but funny that way too.
Yeah, and I'm trying to even understand you as a lyricist too, because I mean, like in the early years for you. It was just kind of this, it's just whatever comes out. This is just how I know to write. But things change, because you can look at, some of those first records that that Kenny Chesney cut. Back where I come from, you wrote that song early in your career, like in second record. And so I feel like even then you started picking up, okay, well, maybe this is how you write a song. Or was that even a case then? Because then you can even write songs for Jimmy Buffett. You can write songs for Marty Robbins or Marty Ray-Ban from Shenandoah. Sorry.
All good.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like that's a talent to be able to take. I mean, do you feel like the songs are always you? Or do you feel like you just kind of write different things depending on the day and what it is and what you're feeling? Like, what are you as a lyricist songwriter?
Everything was me. Probably for about 3 or 4 albums worth of writing. I was just writing whatever came out of my heart, and I was always treated it kind of like it was sacred, And that's part of I said before I never was one to sit down with blank paper and try to write because I always wanted it to be magical. I wanted it to be. I always looked at Muscle Shoals, and I still do, as magical. It's a magical place. You can have a historical reverence for there, But it honestly doesn't matter whether you do or not. If you go there and you make music, it's going to be different and special in a different way because you're there. That place does something. And I always wanted to write songs because they were an inspiration, and that's part of why I never just sat down and said, "Today I'm going to write a song." I schedule my life like I'm not a songwriter, and occasionally a song will just fester up like a pimple and force its way out. and when that happens that way, I know it was inspiration. I know what it was because it messed up whatever my plans were for that day and took over.
Yeah. Are you always chasing that feeling then?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm always scared it's over with. I'm always scared I've done it for the last time, but, and I don't make records very often. If you look, I never have. I don't make a record until I think I've got something to say, and who knows if I'm right, but I have to think I have something to say to even start.
Yeah, I think you do, and that is true, especially like output wise. One of my favorite records of yours is the Orchestra Project. I enjoyed listening to that one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I love that. But especially when, you write a song, Kenny Chesney cuts it years on down the road, and then just everything else in your output, it just seems like you have a formula. I heard you say that you really don't. Like, you're kind of chasing this feeling, this gut utteral thing that you have that do you know when a song is a hit? Do you know even what that is? Or is that the feeling that you know that it's a hit?
No, I've never put, and honestly, I don't judge songs based on being a hit. I really, if I know I did the absolute best I could do, and I got some pretty good representation of what was in my head when I started, I feel like that's a success. And just say, for instance, the song, I co-wrote a song with my buddy Donnie Lowry for Alabama. It was my first number one that I ever had. It was called Old Flame.
Yeah.
And so I love that song. And it was me sort of trying to write a gospel-y kind of melody. It's sort of that rising, augmented, on the way the harmony goes on the hook, on Old Flame Burning, that the way that works.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a cool piece of songwriting. That wasn't necessarily me trying to write for me. It just came out, but it came out of me, and it came out of all the church experience and everything that I had musically, listening to my mom play, big shape note gospel piano.
Right.
But in my mind, that song, that's probably the biggest hit that I've ever written. That's the biggest song in my whole catalog. And I love that my buddy Donnie and I wrote it, and I love that it was a number one. But if you ask me what songs are the most important to me, in my mind, Old Flame would have eventually been written by somebody else. If I didn't write it, if Donnie and I didn't write it, some Nashville guy in a cubicle would have figured out that was a cool way to say that, and they would have said it. So, and I'm probably going to call up a song you never heard of, but I got a song called Socrates. It's a weird song about a service station attendant that was half crazy, but what he said ended up kind of sounding philosophical because of the way he was about his talking. And that song, that song would not exist in the world if it wasn't for me. It had to come through my particular weird upbringing in Mississippi and the Baptists and the prismatic, the literary influences. That song wouldn't exist except nobody else would have written that except me. And so it's both of those songs are precious to me, but that one I feel more, I guess maybe more attached to, because I know it would. It's like the prodigal son. It wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. Old Flame would have found its way around at some point. If I didn't get, I just got to be the guy that had the privilege of writing Old Flame. Socrates is just me.
Yeah. I love it. I feel like I did listen to Socrates because I always look, especially somebody with a big catalog, I always look for the craziest titles or just one that's abnormal to me. And I feel like I have listened to Socrates. But the reason I'm bugging you about lyrics and just even like your songwriting style, like, because I can only compare like what I do in my life to try to understand somebody else's style, if that makes any sense.
Sure, and that's all anybody could do, Brandon.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And so when I look at something like Almost All Good, from the new record Once in a Lifetime, and then I listen to Once in a Lifetime, or I even listen to what's a good track? Oh, Alive and In Between. Alive and In Between has some really deep message counterpoint to it that makes you think about, oh, this guy's prose, he is a songwriter. He's been doing it a while. And then you can listen to Almost All Good, and it's like, okay, he's a songwriter. This is funny. It's point and case in the time. I just think your dynamic range as a songwriter, call it age, wisdom, years, experiences, is just that dynamic. And you don't see that very often. You just don't see an artist like express those dynamics. They're always kind of chasing like one thing. Somebody would have said, oh, Mac, you should just do Old Flame. Just keep doing Old Flame over and over and over. But that hasn't been the case for me.
No, I like to chase. I want to get better, And if you think about people in the business that are lucky enough to get to work in the business for over a period of time. If you narrow it down, you mentioned earlier about people who do everything, people who can perform and write and sing and play and produce. There aren't that many folks that do all of those things.
Yeah.
And that sounds like I'm bragging. I honestly do all those things to probably cloud the issue that I'm not particularly good at any of them. but there aren't that many people who do all of those things to some degree of efficiency. The doing of all those things, pushing yourself to get better, particularly after you're 35 years old, because most of what comes natural to you as a songwriter or as a player or a singer has happened by the time you're 35 years old. And whatever's bursting to get out of you, like those first couple of albums worth of songs were for me, they just burst out, and popped like a creative pimple.
Yeah.
But or Jiffy Pop or whatever your frame of reference was. But after that, you got to dig. You have to go. You have to go dig, and you also have to tap dance around your body of work. You can't totally plagiarize yourself. You can't just write Old Flame over and over again. You have to, and if you're trying to, you have to avoid the actual Old Flame and to get so it gets harder.
Yeah.
And you have a spiraling set of standards. I don't want to repeat myself, but I want to get better, and it gets harder. It takes more work along the way, and if you're somebody who's lucky enough to have had a bunch of hits that you could go out and just play your greatest hits, a lot of times that's it. That's all somebody wants to do. I made several records with Chris Ledoux, who's one of my favorite people on the planet.
Good, man.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to work with Chris, because he's such a phenomenal songwriter, I was like, man, you got anything new? And he goes, oh, hell no, I'm not ever writing any more songs. That's the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I was like, well, you're so good at it. He said, I don't care. I'm not doing that anymore.
Oh, well.
That was brutal.
Yeah.
And he got that, but he could still tell when it was a song he could deliver. He heard it more than anybody did, more than any of his producers. He knew when it was something for him to sing. And I'm just honored to have gotten to work with him, because he's one of the most honorable people, let alone people in show business, that I've ever met in my life. He's just an amazing human being. Like, normally in show business, I feel like I'm kind of the serious, a sincere, serious, mean what I say kind of guy in the context of show business. When I was sitting around with Chris Ledoux, I ended up thinking, I think I may be full of shit.
I feel that way all the time in these conversations. Yeah.
And I don't generally feel that way, but around him, he was just so genuine that, and I honestly don't think I'm full of shit. I have, probably a healthy amount of it for our business, but I'm not full.
No, yeah, it's half full. Let's be positive about it.
Yeah.
It's always jarring when I hear artists, creatives, songwriters, anybody in that kind of lane say there is a fear of that well kind of running dry. And for somebody that's been in it for 6-7 decades, it seems like you're still chasing that fear. Or at least it's like you're heading onto it like head first. You're spearheading that fear and meeting it face to face. I mean, does it feel that way? Or because I have to say I'm 35 and I'm always scared of something unoriginal, or I'm just going to copy the next thing or whatever that is.
No, I'm scared, but I am bolstered by the fact that I want it. I like to go at whatever I'm doing tomorrow. I like to do it not based on anything that I've ever done before. I don't want to write a song as the guy that wrote Old Flame or wrote Socrates or whatever it is that I like about what I've done before.
Yeah.
I don't disregard it. I'm happy about it. But whatever I do next can't be based on that. It can't ride on the coattails of that. It has to stand or fall on its own.
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm not as good a guitar player as I was in my 40s, but I'm not bad.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to get better. I'm still practicing. I'm going to do that some tonight.
Oh, man, practice. What is that? Well, I guess you got all the time in the world right now, so why not?
Yeah, well, no, it's fun. It's music. We get to play music. We don't have to play music. We get to. It's a privilege.
What's your song? The Job. I like my job, or
it's my job. It's my job. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And yeah, well, and Buffett cut that, and that's the first song of mine that he recorded.
Oh, wow.
And when a writer as good as Jimmy cuts one of your songs, that's a compliment.
No kidding.
And he doesn't cut it because it sounds like a Buffett song to him. He actually cuts people. Because I produce his records, I know this really well. People pitch him songs that sound like Jimmy Buffett songs all the time. He can write Jimmy Buffett songs like Falling Off a Log.
Yeah.
He wants something awesome that he would not have written. That's why we cut Bruce Coburn songs.
Oh, wow.
Because he respects him. We cut a John Prine song now again because John saw it from a different angle than Jimmy. He cut It's My Job because he wouldn't have written that.
Yeah.
He loved it, but he would not. That's not the way he would have said it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Steve Goodman. Jimmy's he's a fan of songwriters, but if he wants a new Jimmy Buffett song, then give him a couple hours and we'll have one.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. And I know somebody on the inside if I ever need a cut, which is every day, by the way.
There you go. Right. Understood. Yeah.
I'll send some stuff your way. This is why I get people's phone numbers to bother you via text.
There you go.
Yeah, no,
well, speaking of which, I'm about to have to jump and run somebody to a doctor's appointment.
I know. But yeah, you're jumping in this thing, man. You're meeting Fear head on. You're releasing Once in a Lifetime. I was glad to see Drake White on the record. You even cut a Beatles.
Oh, Drake's
tune.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is an idiotic thing to do, but I got a kind of a fun arrangement of Norwegian Wood, so I had to give it a try.
Yeah, man, this is I think this is a great record, man. It's a Mac record to me. It's scaled back. It's got great parts to it, and it's just incredible songs from the depth to it, and just even some lightness to it as well. I like it, man.
Well, thank you so much, Brandon. I appreciate it, and I'm poor enough at self promotion that I'm extremely grateful for anybody helping the cause, and I thank you much for that.
Yeah, man, you got it.
All right, listen, are you tired of being paid in clicks and likes? I feel your pain. Social media and streaming platforms help people find your work, but getting you paid is a completely different story. Patreon is built for creators and not advertisers. You'll develop a sustainable income source by offering a monthly membership to your fans. In turn, they'll get access to your exclusive community, premium content, and a chance to become active participants in the work they love. The creative system is broken, and we all know this, so sign up on patreon.com right now. That's patreon.com and start building the steady income stream you deserve. Folks, I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mac McAnally. Be sure to go to his website, McAnally.com, and go give him a follow on all those socials, Mac McAnally. Of course, the album is out, Once in a Lifetime. You got anything on those streaming platforms, go check it, Once in a Lifetime. Go listen to it. It's definitely worth the time, effort, energy, money, all of it. Go buy the record. Go buy his website. Again, McAnally.com. We appreciate you guys taking a little listen to this. I really enjoy you guys interacting with me on social media and just taking part in even the conversations. Go visit us at SMI Podcast and, of course, at Unofficial Brandon. Then we also have SMIPodcast.com. Drop us a line anytime. If you guys enjoyed this episode, all I ever ask is that you just share it with a friend. Maybe somebody's dealing with the same headspace. You find it interesting. You enjoyed the stories, especially people talking about their careers. Just share it on social media. We appreciate the tags. We appreciate the subscribing. We also appreciate the reviews. Also, go visit American Songwriter Podcast Network. Go check out all their other stuff. Even tag them in a post. Let them know that you listen to this. And I think that's it from me. I'll see you guys next week. Happy surviving out there.